Should be topic number 9 is, does it make sense to try to discover our origins? We know that we are different, and that is all that matters now. True or false? So this came with a link. Um, Let me make sure I have the start point right. Yeah. So we're going to take a listen, and then we'll discuss it.
See this pattern. So Genesis 2 is not the creation of the whole world, but the creation of a new race of people that would worship Yahweh. So where did we come from then? Do we all descend from Adam and Eve? Or is evolution true? I get this question all the time. If I am no longer a Christian, I must believe we all came from monkeys. Did anyone ever consider that there could possibly be a different answer? Now, I do not have the answer to that, but I do think both atheists and Christians get this one wrong as well. I remember when I was a creationist and I learned from Ken Ham how two brown people, Adam and Eve, could eventually turn into white people and black people and yellow people. And I swallowed that nonsense then. Same thing after the flood with Noah's three children moving to different parts of the world and various races developed out of that gene pool. What? And then I looked at evolution and I found the exact same problem. If monkeys evolved into humans, did different monkeys somehow evolve into different races and then we all just stayed that way? In my video from last year, Why I Left Christianity 1 Year Later, I talked about haplogroups. A haplogroup is a group of people who share a common ancestor by DNA. Now, this could be everyone on your father's side of the family or everyone on your mother's side. But let's go back, way, way back to the earliest ancestor we can find. If we go all the way back, do we all share that same DNA ancestor? Now, this is just DNA science. So, this is something relatively new that we have access to. We all share the same mother. Let's call her Eve, shall we? The mother of all living. But we do not all share the same father, not even close. In today's world, we have 14 different fathers. We also have 14 different broad categories of race. Race is not just a skin color. That's easy to spot our differences. But we also have different types of hair, in fact, very different types of hair. Most races have different eyes and various other physical features such as nose, lips, even our fingernails can be significantly different. Our cultures are very different as well. And I don't think it is just because we grew up with a different group of people, although that plays a significant role in it. But there are traits that broadly define a certain race. And by this race, I am talking about pure races that have not intermarried or intermingled with other races. In general, Black people are stronger, more athletic, and have more rhythm than the other races. In general, Hispanics value family far more than other races do. In general, Asians are more efficient and value serious accomplishments in life. You get the idea. And since it is the trend to hate on whites in today's world, I will let you come up with your own ideas about us. Now, there are 14 different races today and 14 different haplogroups, which means each race, each haplogroup, has the same father, but the 14 different haplogroups have 14 different fathers altogether. And we all have the same mother, at least according to the DNA technology we have available to us today. So, how did these 14 different haplogroups come into being? Were there 14 different Adams for one Eve? No, because we can kind of see when each group came into being. It was like all of a sudden a new being came along, had sex with a woman, and boom, there was a new race. Well, what about evolution? Same thing. Did some monkey suddenly jump into the human system, have sex with a woman, it produced a new race? That makes no sense either. And neither does 14 different monkey strains producing 14 different human races. Now, there could well have been more than 14 different races of humans at some point, but those are what we know today. So both atheists and Christians get that wrong. Let's go back to the creation story now.
Okay. There was a lot there. Does it make sense to try to discover our origins? We know that we are different, and that is all that matters now, true or false. I'll throw this one to gas them up first. What say you?
I don't know. I mean, if that's the case, then how come they haven't thrown Columbus and all these other people in the trash can? I just find it interesting when they make these type of arguments.
All right. Thank you, Gas, for that. Tanzan, what say you? Unmute your mic if you're there, Tan. All right, Tan might be gone. It is
No,
late.
I'm still here. Yeah, it is kind of late, but when it comes to this deciphering between ancient 20,000 years ago and all that, I think it's interesting as a scientific hobby, but I don't really think that it helps too much in present circumstances. I think that it's more important to create our own story and destiny rather than be caught up in this the details. It would be interesting to chart the course of human migration, of course, but I think for us as a people, knowing what happened to other people is not as important as knowing where we're going as a people. So that's it for me. I think mostly we should start making up the stories that we want to tell ourselves of our origin, whether they are true or not. That's how you build the consciousness.
I
Yes,
agree
that's
with
it.
that. I agree with that. Buana Ezekiel, what say you?
I would love Coco for you to invite this woman on the show and just leave her to Gas and Tan to have a go at her. To have a go at her. Because I understand that we are living in a time where freedom of speech, you have a right to say what you want to say. But I would leave it to the scientifically illiterate, Tan and Gas to have a go at her. Because where I am is where Shakanta Diop is, as far as us being Homo sapiens sapiens, and that's where I am. We are the so-called original man. And I think that Tan and Gas takes it a little bit further in asking philosophical and even metaphysical questions. But I would like them to, I would really like to hear them have a discussion with a person like this on the panel as far as where humanity came from and where it would eventually go. These people are free to express these so-called liberal beliefs, but I really would like to hear what their positions is on this particular individual because you know I, where I am is like I say, I think that a man has came out of Africa, the man we know today, and I think that we have mixed with so-called Neanderthals. But I have my own particular beliefs. I think that these people, Tan and Gas, are more they are more scientific in their conclusions. So I would just really leave these kinds of arguments to these individuals because they are more intellectual. They have more intellectual teeth to have a dialogue with this particular person. But that's where I am with it.
Kevin Carre, what say you?
I'll make it real quick. I don't believe anything sorry, I'm stuttering my word tonight. My tormentors, I don't believe anything that they tell me. I gotta believe what my answers are guiding me to, not some fairy tale and whatever she's saying. It is what it is. They can say what they want to say, but I don't have to believe them.
I think it's interesting what Trigger Happy 262 is saying. First, he directed us to Tan. He said that doesn't make sense. How can you create your own story? What does that mean historically? This history is the history. I think other people created their stories, and they kept up with the stories until it became the fact. I don't see why we can't do the same type of thing. Trigger Happy 262 also says also anthropology is political. Notice that different people are overly concerned about who were the first people on Earth. Europeans have different theories to try to make it seem like they are the oldest people, but science says they are younger. That's an interesting statement. He says also allowing to make your own narratives validates the Hebrew Israelites. So this is nonsense. Ground yourself in the objective history of your people. Bobby Wright says, I think it good to know the story of our origins as Africans, but right now we have bigger things to worry about, the survival of our people, right? With that said, let's go to Marcus Garvey's The Way. What say you to everything you heard here?
From what Tan had said about the making up the story, the first thing I did think about, like what the other person said, was the Hebrew Israelites, because they're making up their own stories. In terms of what the lady said with the haplogroups, I think everything is theoretical, and science has already proven that that the black race is the oldest race. Whether they want to admit it or not, it always comes out that black people always came first. No matter if they took that what was it, the head of the first English person. You remember they did something like that on the news the other day and said it was like a I don't want to say Bowana man or something like that, and they made him like a white person, and then when they made like Cleopatra. And then they did Cleopatra, and then made her looking like an Anglo-Saxon and all this stuff. So I mean, they'll say one thing on one end, but then when they want to show the physical proof, then they try to make the person white. And I said the other day, in terms of race mixing, I was telling y'all, like China and India are next to each other, but in between you have Nepal. Nepal is a mixture of both nations. But when I look at the world map, then I look at it. I look at China and Africa. They're across from each other, and then I look at India in between, and I'm like, well, Indians, cheddar man, yeah. Then I look at Indians in between, and I'm like, well, they kind of look like a little bit of mix of both. What we know that these people were always, before the Europeans came, that these people were merchants, and they traded between each other. They bred between each other. The cultures lived amongst each other without the European concept and the biases that we hear today. So the idea of who came first, even when the Chinese scientists was looking at the origins of Chinamen, even they had to admit, the Chinese doctor, when he looked at the DNA, had to admit that it was Africans. He didn't want to see it, but the evidence was there, and he had to openly admit it. To, I think it was like a British what they call it, journalist, because everybody wants to know their origins. Okay, now we know our origins. As a race of people, we know as a race we're hated. No matter who it is, we know across the globe. We didn't invade people's countries, we didn't terrorize them, we didn't submit them to genocide, but we're hated the most. Yeah. So our history is important, and I think it should be important to us. I think our origins should be important to us as a people. But on a global scale, as somebody else had previously said, we have more important things to deal with. But when I walk down the street, I walk down the street in my mind saying that, I'm from the bloodline of the first people to ever been here. So I think it's significant for our children to know their origins, for just for them, because Europeans think they're first. I mean, they've bred their children to make them think that they're the first. If you speak to Indians, they think they're the first. Every race thinks they're the first, no matter what the history says. So for us, I think it's important for our children to think that they're the first as well. That's it.
I appreciate that. Marcus Garvey is the way. Does anyone have any last words they want to say to this? In the chat, Trigger IP262 says, that's why I was adamant in saying it's nonsense. Saying it like that sounds like the Hebrew Israelite is right, because he is making a blackwash story, but he is missing an ingredient. The ingredient is that the history is not his own history. So the mythology is not of a solid foundation. Also, again, we have multiple mythologies among us that also has to be acknowledged. Bobby Wright says that documentary is on YouTube about the Chinese scientists admitting the African origin of early Chinese. Hey, if you guys find that documentary. I have a channel on the Discord for documentaries. Post it up or DM me and I'll post it up inside that channel. I like to see that documentary too.
Yeah, and it's not even very long. I think it was just more like an interview. I don't even think it was a documentary. It seemed like it was an interview, a short interview.
Oh,
I
okay.
would like I would like to hear, because I thought it was an agreed opinion that black people was the first people on the planet, well, human beings on the planet. But I never knew that other people would have a different perspective on that. And I would like to hear what the Asians and the Chinese would would say as far as human beings is concerned. That them being the first people here, well, the thinking human being I'm talking about, as far as them being the original people for the planet. I never heard that discussion before,
Yeah,
and I
yeah, because they're most of it is built on their religion. So their religion will give them an origin story, like how you have Adam and Eve. So their most other people's religions give them an origin story where they were the first people. But
wow, wow,
sometimes that doesn't explain everybody else. But for the
okay,
Indians, they have Brahma, and he's the
yes,
first god, and he
yeah,
made them. He
yeah,
made them. I mean, but it don't seem like he's explaining how the rest of us got here. He's just explaining them. So everybody has their own origin story. Think of Superman. He and his
yes,
origin
yes,
story. So
yes,
yeah,
yes, yes, yeah. I didn't know that they because I didn't really consider the fact that the Indians and other people of the world would have a origin story where they put themselves at the beginning as the first mind. I never considered it, so it would be interesting to hear that perspective. Very interesting.
All right.
Mention
Uh,
something regarding the Hebrew Israelites and the idea of making up stories. For me, I think is the difference between this characterization of Hollywood where people want a black James Bond versus creating your own character, black characters. So there is a difference between making up your own stories versus putting your stories on other people's. So no, I wouldn't endorse something like that, which is basically just blackwashing whatever new narrative that there was before. I would say that if black people wanted to create an origin story, it's not throwing away historical events. When Superman goes along with the Cold War, you find this comic book heroes somehow interacting with real life events like the Kennedy assassination and all this. So it's not to say that mythology replaces history or science and all these things. Is to make mythology work as a tool of power and empowerment for your people and your children. So whether science turns out to be to the first humans are black, this is how a white scientist will look at it and say, well, this is what evolution says. Oh, actually we were not the first, but that means that these people are more primitive than us. This is where the idea of primitivity and savagery and all that, it really comes about, because once they realize that they're not the first people, then that means that being first is no longer desirable. So being the most recent becomes being the most advanced and civilized and all of that. So everything that came with being the oldest people become thrown to the dust. So while we are fighting to be the oldest people, they're actually saying, okay, since science says we're the newest people, we're going to claim being new and leave them, with their old, gods and whatever and people, and say that they're actually closer to monkeys and we are closer to the gods. So, even science everything can be made into a narrative to fit your viewpoint. So, but once you have your viewpoint, then you can make everything work for you. So just like with the Mormons, once the idea is that we are better than other people, even if you encounter other people, you'll still have a myth or a legend to tell the children. Because when we're talking about science, these are people who are, college educated, grown up and all that. You're not going to start your children off with haplotypes and, pheromone, whatever, scientific things. You're going to give them something easily digestible. And then as they grow up, you're going to tell them that actually this is how things are. But the message is still going to be the same. So no, I'm not saying that, we disregard our history and all that. I'm saying that we create stories and myths around an origin that actually celebrate us as a people and make us to be, something that we can pass to the children. So if being, if science proves that we are an ancient people, then you use the idea of wisdom and knowledge prescience before other people. If history proves that, science proves that we actually the latest, in the scientific appearances, then you say, well, we're the newest and the best and all that. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
If they think that calling us as a race closer to monkeys is an insult to us, I don't see monkeys committing mass genocide. They don't commit mass genocide, so that's not an insult to me. You know what I mean? The behavior of monkeys is, to me, has been a more humane than what the humans do. So then it's not a slight against the monkeys, because like I say, I've never seen the monkeys create an atomic bomb that decimate other monkeys. You know what I mean? So if they want to put us in that category, so be it. So friggin' be it. You know what I mean?
But Nahaguziki, they're not doing that for you to insult you. The first thing they're doing is to explain to their children, like in that video, and to also explain to themselves and to maintain their principles. So if you get offended or not offended, that's just a side, aspect of it. But their main explanation with the myths, especially with the myths and legends are not scientific proof. They're just a way for people to make themselves feel better and to give an explanation to children who may not have that, scientific capability. So with us, in not giving children that, that fable and that means and that way to process the world, you're just telling a 5-year-old, the world is dark and terrible and you're black and you're the world is terrible. Even telling them it's cursed, that's still a myth that you're giving to them. That's still some sort of explanation versus just telling them to go out into the world and face it. So when they tell their children that, oh, it's because these demons, rebelled against heaven, they tie them religion, with the demons insurrection, and they tie that with a new experience of these new black people that they hadn't encountered before, or they had before and they were hostile towards. But in any case, they tie those two things together to not only empower their children in making themselves feel better about themselves, but also give them an explanation for why these other people are there. We do have origin stories in Africa. Every tribe has, how they first came about and so on, and how God gave them this and that. But what we don't have in plenty is an explanation for other people's origins or other people's encounters with others. So they have more explanations for the others than they have more for themselves. So they, I don't have a lot of stories of, the origin of, whiteness amongst, white tribes, but there are a lot of explanations for, the origin of evil or darkness or something other than themselves. So I think our focus has been more of ourselves and not the other, and for them it's mostly been the other and not so much themselves. But yeah.
This is the reason, and I know I get a ping from my brothers who disagree with me with the Nation of Islam, because, you know, whether you want to agree with it or not, Elijah Muhammad called these people what they was. They say he's a bunch of devils, and they act in a whole lot of devilishment in their thinking and their philosophies. And I think that these people you need to take these people down a peg off of their so-called their privileged position in believing that these people are superior. These people are devils. These people are devils, and you need to explain these people in this kind of way, whether it is myth or it's actual reality, because they've only practiced gunboat diplomacy around the world. You know what I mean? When they have made contact with the rest of the world, it's not been an embrace of the world. It's been gunboat diplomacy. So if that's the practice of devilishment, you call them a bunch of devils and leave it at that. That's our mythology for these people. You know what I mean? And I understand that, many of my brothers take umbrage with me mentioning the NOI. And even though it's a mythology or a mythical story, they have their myth for us. We saw it tonight. We saw it tonight with the Mormon mythology about black people and how they perceive us. So what's in us to make our own origin story of where they come from? People say, "Oh, we have a problem with it." No, no, no. If they have a mythological origin story for where we come from, well, let's create our origin story for where these people come from. And
The story of Yakub, you've heard that one.
even if it's that, and I know people take umbrage with that too, but like I say, it's Yakub is, it may be fanciful, but look at what Joseph Smith did with us. He said the reason why we are asking to turn black is for the reason. So Joseph Smith has his origin story. Well, let the Nation of Islam have our origin story for them. So now we on an equal basis. You know what I mean? So when people poo-poo the Nation of Islam for creating an origin story and call them a race of devils, so we just play the tape of Joseph Smith and what he perceived about black people on this planet. So now we on an equal footing. So now, so where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? You know. But I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there.
Any other comments here?
I just wanted to say that to me the Europeans are still admitting how you're saying that because they were younger they claim superiority, but in their actions they're proving that they're not superior because now they want to go back to mud huts. They'll talk about how environmentally friendly it was, how environmentally friendly it is. Hammocks, how it's good for when they have the little carriers that look like the ones that the women in the eastern part of the world from Africa all the way to the far east wear on their backs for their babies because it's better to keep the babies close. From environmental ideas. All of these were ideas used by what they would call, the indigenous people and therefore the first peoples. They're understanding that their ways of approaching the world with this industrialization and pollution and stuff isn't working. So yeah, they're the younger ones and they can claim to be superior, but they are looking back for solutions to solve the problems that they have made. So they can say what they want, but at the end of it, most of us can also agree, and most of the world is agreeing that yeah, um, we need things that are biodegradable. Yeah, a clay jar may not have been fully biodegradable, but it doesn't hurt the earth like plastic. Um, you know, um, Again, the mud huts. Yeah, you have the Timbuktu, which created a whole university out of what was that, clay and mud, that still stands. But then you have other civilizations who have passed and those huts have gone, the biodegradable roofs and all that stuff. We understood that our imprint on the earth was not to be here forever. I mean, except for the pyramids and stuff like that. So it's a whole long story, but Europeans are looking back for solutions, and they can say they're superior, but they're looking back at the supposed monkey men, for the solution. So that's it.
All right, I appreciate that conversation. Trigger Happy 262 has much smoke for Tanzan tonight, it seems. Tan, you could address if you feel to in the chat. He might
I
be on the
think we
K.
have that effect lately. Everybody wants to start some debate, but yeah, maybe another time on that one. I know we have already exhausted the subject quite a bit, so yeah, Trigger Happy, we can pick it up on another day.
Trigger Happy, you could post some of your thoughts under the video when it posts to YouTube. I'm sure Tanzan usually checks back under the comment section. I'm sure she'll check it out.
Or you can email me if you have if you want to write it down. But yeah, either way.
All right. Let's go to the last topic for tonight, man. I thank every one of you who's been on the panel tonight, everyone who's been in the chat. Thank all of you for joining us tonight.